at 2 o'clock in the art gallery of the Ukrainian House will be opening of the exhibition and through the rough of catacombs to the light of resurrection. So all of this is dedicated to the historical date which is set on 8th to 10th of March 1946, the so-called Lviv meeting took place. The terminology it is very important in 2016 to commemorate the sad events of 1946. Today we have here His Highness Liubomyr Huzar, the Major Archbishop Emeritus of the Ukrainian Catholic Church, and we have also among us Volodymyr Viatrovych, head of the Ukrainian Institute of National Memory, and Oleh Turiy, Vice Rector for Program Development of the Ukrainian Catholic University. First will be the short introductory speeches offered, and we are giving the floor first to His Holiness Liubomyr Huzar, the Major Archbishop Emeritus of the Ukrainian Catholic Church. Thank you very much. We can discuss what will be the right word to say, commemoration of some date or celebration of some day. These are two very different words and different notions. Of course, we commemorate historical events, and one of them is the one we are talking about today, why we are gathering here today, what happened 70 years ago. But I think that we also need, we the faithful people and children of Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church, to remember that persecutions for the Orthodox faith in Jesus Christ, they are very special. Spiritual aspect is inherent to this, and spiritual value. The church, in some wonderful way, according to the providence, according to the hand of God, develops through patience. This is the disposition, the hand of God, the providence, and this is to begin with our speeches today. We will have the chance, with the help of experts, specialists, to try to understand historical aspects, political aspects of what has happened, of what happened those days. If only we stop on that only topic, then some way we will lose a very important insight that what happened in 70 years ago what we remember today and commemorate today, and as the dozens of years after 1946, as a consequence of that event of 1946. We should remember, otherwise we can lose a very important heritage, our spiritual heritage. And I should say once again, it seems to me that we are not enough resort and understood the spiritual value of those dozens of years and what happened 70 years ago, before and after that event, and we should much more think it over to understand how this tragedy, this tragic event before, far before, still as early as 19th century, and dozens of persecutions after 1946, all those spiritual elements which are we need still more think them over, rethink, to understand that our church today and in future, I hope it will be developing. It can develop now and can make those hopes true. Thanks to all those persecutions which the faithful survived, it is hard to say that during 1 hour that everything can be restored in a quite novel way. Well, the steps have been made in this direction, but I think that we have done too little efforts to open this heritage, this treasury, and to use this potential. And this is the moment, this is the event from which we can take our strengths to deepen the spiritual values. Our church, which was liquidated those days, the process of liquidation of our church was in 19 years. It lasted in 19th century, and it ended by pseudo meeting, liquidation of our church in 1946. It was the final act in Zakarpattia. It was issued in 1949 when, in certain historical sequence, that poison of the range of those events which were oriented to liquidate our church, to demolish it, to ruin it, to make it not existing any longer. And these facts still provide us a chance to grow, to expand This is not ordinary thinking. This is not average thinking. When there was some liquidation of Greek Catholic Church in 19th century, there were attempts to ruin it. And anyway, nevertheless, we should say that that moment 70 years ago, it would give us the willingness to better understand how this martyrship, how it helps us to have motivation. And we were motivated, and we have already achieved our existence, which we have this moment, and we get hope from these sad events for us to develop now, to develop in the future. And we hope for extension of the church. And we are talking now about the spiritual strength of the church. I am often asked today, what should the church look like? And I respond that this is not only my answer, this is the response of thousands of years. The church is a spiritual institution. Of course, it exists in very in real historical circumstances, but its strength, its value for the mankind in its spiritual heritage. 70 years ago, they thought that this was the end, liquidation of our church. Although liquidated those days now, 70 years ago, they thought that we would never exist. Maybe temporarily, maybe externally. But I think that thanks to those events, we received more strength, we revived, and thanks God will serve our people in future even better. Thank you very much. And now Mr. Oleh Turiy will help us with some facts of history to understand the context which preceded this event, historical context. Mr. Turiy have already been asked by journalists why so many priests came to that meeting 70 years ago. Thank you.
Разом з вами і в присутності блаженнішого говорити на цю тему.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak. I will give the answer, but first I would like to tell you about the issue we started with. Whether we should commemorate or whether it is really impossible, whether it is really important. And also in the institute that works for 25 years, it works on the different church activities and also methods of repressive regimes against the church. And I should say that speaking on the whole, historians, scientists, they know a lot. And we have fundamental research that show even all the days of preparation and realization and implementation of also the assemblies and convocations that were held in the state. And we hear about voluntary meetings, and the word convocation is used, but what happened in 1946, we can't call it convocation. There are no grounds for this. And I will give you an example. I have this book in my hand. This is a book of Mr. Batsurkev, Canadian political scientist who worked in Canada, and also he gathered information here in Ukraine. And in 1996, he published a book that showed the mechanisms of liquidation of Greek and Catholic Church in the Soviet Union. And in 2006, we re-edited this book, and now we hold this conference. We organize this exhibition because there are people who they don't want to see the facts. They do not want to see the truth. That's why one of the reasons to commemorate this event is to remind and to name this event, and also to assess this event from the scientific point of view, and also from social and religious point of view. And we shouldn't only think about the past. I tell you this as a historian. We should find some, we should learn some lessons from this history. We should make some conclusions, and we should build life without violence, to build our life on trust and confidence, on those rules that are our faith. And I won't take much time. And as of today, the researchers, not only Professor Batsirkev, who has already died, but many scientists who work now, you know that after Revolution of Dignity, we have now the access, and this is unique, that we have the opportunity not only to look at the cases of those people who were repressed, but also there are no obstacles. We can come and see the originals, the sources, and we can get understanding of these events. And speaking briefly, the case is that during the Second World War, Stalin saw the impossibility by communist ideology to mobilize people to counteract Nazis. He decided to use the church, Russian Orthodox Church, that suffered from repressions in 1920s and 1930s. He used the church for ideological support of power, and in order to, by the hands of this church, to destroy other churches by creating some sort of religious internationalism. They wanted to create a center of Orthodox Church in Moscow in order to control other regions. And the drama of the situation is that the Greek and Catholic Church, it could not be incorporated in the Soviet system because it was Ukrainian. It was connected with during thousands of years. It was connected with the Ukrainian people. It was connected with Ukrainian self-identity. Shkevich, Galavatsky, you remember that they built alternative civil society in the framework of different empires, Hungarian and Poland rule, and also this church was Catholic, and it means that it had relatives abroad. And for civil system, the relatives abroad, it was a very bad thing for a person. It broke careers of people, and there were people who have millions of people abroad and who were connected with all the Catholic world and with the Rome. And for me, the third reason is the most important. Ukrainian Greek and Catholic Church was not a part of some political mechanism. This was a search of its people. It was a church that lived with these people and shared all suffering of these people, and that's why it was an integral part of the society and societal life. It was not only the church. The system of total control that excluded any alternative position. That system, it couldn't tolerate the system because these were three reasons. Stalin's regime tried to liquidate this church using other church and formed this liquidation as the unification. And it was not a convocation of Greek and Catholic Church because there were no top officials from Rome, and the participants of this convocation, they were brought by NKVD officers, and under their control this convocation was held. And if you watch the film and the photos, these you could see that those people who vote, they raise their hands and then they look at aside because they were forced by the system to do this. And many people that took part in this convocation, they refused to be united with the Orthodox Church, and they were then, many of them were arrested and persecuted. And in other words, we may say that this convocation was orchestrated and manipulated and carried out under the threatened by some that was sanctioned by Stalin, who was the head of the Soviet state at that time. And I think this is enough for beginning. And if you have some questions, we have a lot of work done, and I invite you to the exhibition where the materials, the results are presented, the results of our research. Thank you.
And now we have a chance to hear from Mr. Viatrovych about importance of this event in the time of nowadays of transformations from post-communist transformation. Raphael Nemko, a lawyer, in his article "Soviet Genocide in Ukraine" is saying that Soviet policy against Ukrainians was a vivid element of genocide. It was they destroyed Allied, and one of the elements was also destroyal of church. In 1920s, 1930s, Ukrainian Orthodox Church, in fact, was destroyed. And then this methodology, which was already tested in 1920s by Soviet government, then in 1940s it was used again against in in the Western Ukraine in 1939. They started policy against Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church. They ruined both political life, social life, and church as national attribute of Ukrainians. And Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church became a target of the Soviet regime. Because it opposed building of communistic totalitarian society in this territory of Western Ukraine. So Soviet regime, when it returned in 1944 to those areas, they resumed their efforts opposing the Greek Catholic Church. So against the Sheptytsky Metropolitan, because they understood their reputation, which was huge. Indeed, the climax was pseudo-council of 1946, and this event that we should remember, and as a sad page of our history, and so that we understand mechanisms which the communist regime used those days and after that till now. This is a kind of hybrid war, example of repressions and propaganda and pressure. When someone vote for under pressure, as it was at that pseudo council in 1946, it resembles the referenda, last year's referenda in Crimea. So the same mechanism which were used in 1946, they were used these days by the Russian Federation. So I agree to Mr. Turiy. The society is rather naive and blind. What mechanisms they use to manipulate the consciousness of the society, how they try to manipulate, Russia tries to manipulate our minds in economy, in policy. Modern Russian Federation also have hostilities with us in the spiritual sectors, and it started in 1940s. This battle started. We should be we should try to open the truth as much as possible about those repressions against Greek Catholic Church. There are materials in the KGB archives about those repressions bodies, which were the tools to liquidate the church, starting with 1998. We have been cooperating with the Institute of History of Church, and one of the results of our cooperation is today's opening today exhibition. The exhibits concern 1940s through 1980s. This church didn't stop existence. It was an underground church, and it had been combating for its existence through 1980s. I am very glad that those years, in 2008, it seems to me that there were students of Greek Catholic University who used this chance and replicated large volumes of materials from archives, and when some return of Soviet of Soviet era started again, but those materials they had already been copied to electronic media, to digital media, and so the security service of Ukraine, they tried to confiscate computers because copied documents they could have been in any point in any country of the world on digital carriers. So decommunization process today, it proceeds with opening all the documents. There is a law on access to the archives for the period 1917 to now to 1991. Now we are talking about researches where we can see how priests were interrogated, but we are also talking about agents related documents, how these agents' activities tried to combat with the Greek Catholic Church. On the one hand, this document, they show the methodology of the KGB activities, why it is important to remember this history. This is one more example, yet another example of our heroism, because the Soviet regime has failed to stop existence of the Greek Catholic Church. It went underground and now it exists again in the public and the liquidators now have been liquidated who made an attempt to so the next, this is once again when Ukraine tries to cope with challenging situation, although we do not have enough resources, but we may take strength and inspiration from those events. So the 70th anniversary of the Pseudo Council, researchers made many efforts, put many efforts to find out the details of that council meeting. Some people ask, maybe it was a legitimate council, so we understood that people know very little information about that event, and this concerns not only the history of Greek Catholic Church. Unfortunately, we witnessed that during 25 years of independence, our historians didn't try to do anything to disclose true information to the general public. So the exhibition which we are presenting today, this is about historians who would like to disclose true information. because we lack information about Greek Catholic Church efforts to stand up for their existence. So this exhibition fills this gap.
So we have the time for the questions. So raise your hand and speak, please. Please introduce yourself first. Good afternoon, Sergeyenko Natalia. It's a very nice exhibition. But not only Greek and Catholic Church and other churches suffered, and maybe some other events should be held, some other exhibitions. Of course, when I worked in the archives of SBU, the most active copies of these materials were the representatives of Ukrainian Catholic University, one of the Protestant churches, and they copied a lot of materials, and I believe that each of them have something to tell. And as the I'm ready to support these initiatives, these exhibitions, because this is the events in the history of Ukraine. And these exhibitions, they are organized, and I don't remember exactly, but 3 or 4 years ago, our institute, we also presented some artifacts and exhibition in Zhytomyr. It was connected with the persecution of Christians and the faith of a Baptist church, and there was a great exhibition, and we have many initiatives in the region, and I know that people work here in Kiev, and this exhibition is not only the exhibition of our university, but also due to the archives of SBU, you will have the opportunity to see the original documents. Of course, these are not the part of a permanent exposition, but maybe we will ask for 18th of March that our colleagues present this, and we are ready to share our experience, but we cannot do everything alone. That's why we should inspire others to hold such exhibitions. We should just do it. And do you have other questions? 17th channel, Andrei Ponomarenko. The question to Liubomyr. Do you feel some communication between churches after the meeting with the Pope? Personally, I don't see and hear anything that would be a real change in history science. There is a notion what is historic. Historic events are the events that change the course of events. And the classic example of this is the history of churches, the meeting of Paul VI and the Patriarch of Atenagar, who met, and as the conclusion of their meeting, there were some very concrete events. For example, lifting of some curses, ancient curses, and whether some results of these meetings, I don't see these consequences, and I don't foresee that there will be some further meetings and some not meetings, but some consequences, some real change, I mean, in the relationship between Catholic and Russian Orthodox churches. I have a question on historic truth. And it was said that you don't have any, that Kiev Patriarchate was provided with some facilities. And I have the question to historians. Ukrainian Catholic Church, does it have the right for some historic facilities in Kiev? When you ask historians, it's a very difficult task to tell. Because, of course, it's easy to speak in the terms of religion, like the words like reconciliation and so on and so forth. And the Greek and Catholic Church is the direct. We were here from the times of, from those times when Christianity came here. We are not a regional event. And paradoxical situation for the people who think in stereotypes, but those who understand the history, do you remember Beresteyska Union that restored Kievan metropoly? It was adopted by those who are now in the center of Ukraine and in the territory of Belarus, and also you know that there was some opposition to the unity. And if we are speaking about historic grounds, they are even more in the center of northern Ukraine than in the west of Ukraine, when Union Church got its presence in the 18th century, and you know that here in Kiev in 17th century, St. Sophia of Kiev was a cathedral of Uniate metropoly. And if we are speaking in historic terms, we have such grounds, but now we are in a different reality. And in our independent Ukraine, we continue to be the hostages of post-Soviet legislation. And our legislation provide the ground for existence for churches, and some churches are provided by the state to the churches, and it is like some sort of trade or political relation, but we do not have the law on restitution. Those facilities that were taken from the churches, and we don't have legislation on financial consequences for those who suffered from repressions. And as I know, Ukrainian Greek and Catholic Church did not put a question like this, that they search for some benefits, physical benefits. And the main task of Ukrainian state, if it wants to get rid of Soviet past, it wants to be a European state, it should rethink its attitude to this suffering that were done by previous regime in order to prevent abuse. And we should have proper legislation that provide proper legal ground, and thank God. And I think that it should be stressed that here in Ukraine we have a situation where we have a diversity of churches, and moreover, a paradox here. Due to the victims of Maidan, we have a feeling that our Christians are closer, that each church opened something in other churches. They look at each other like friends, not like enemies, and they have common tasks. And these material things, they quarrel and separate and don't help us. And these cases should be resolved truthfully, and in this way we would have better situation. And the problems appear when we politicize and legalize the situation. And I don't see anything bad. If some churches that are architectural monuments, they should be used by churches. And opposition say that those places in some places we have some difficult situations, but we shouldn't forget that we have such churches as Notre Dame de Paris that is used both as historic monument or, for example, St. Vit Cathedral in Prague. So these monuments are used both as historic monuments and as churches. So I believe that some churches here should be used as churches of Greek and Catholic Church. First of all, my condolences as to the fact of the pseudo convocation and to congratulate the church that it survived. This is a great achievement. And today we should rethink the historic facts and we should come to some conclusions in order not to repeat the situation when the state pressure on the conversions, on the churches, and force the church for something. And I would like to know your opinion on some other facts connected with the history of Greek and Catholic Church of Ukraine and how they are viewed now on the unit and the element of influence on the Catholic world, and also cooperation with the Nazi regime and how it is viewed now, and what is the attitude towards these facts. And the last one, how the representatives of Greek and Catholic Church see the pressure on Orthodox Ukrainian Church that is now in modern Ukraine, and also from the side of Kiev Patriarchate. And thank you. I may start and then my colleagues will continue in the order you asked these questions. First, I thank you for understanding of the character of this event. We are speaking today, the 7th anniversary of so-called pseudo-convocation that was carried out by special forces and with the use of Russian Orthodox Church in order to destroy other church. And as of Beresteyskaya unit and other events, I would say that for Greek and Catholic Church, and it is also connected with Liubomyr and there should be some series of readings. We conducted these readings in 18 places. These were conferences with all the specialists that were in the world right then. And these were Ukrainian experts, Natalia Yakovenko from Kharkiv. It was the PhD Yuri, Igor Yusychenko, Dnipropetrovsk, Kharkiv, Lutsk. We held these Beresteyskaya readings, and from different sides we discussed preconditions and conditions and of the Beresteyskaya Union. And also there were some pastoral letters, and also Liubomyr also told about the parallels that are used by Moscow Patriarch, where it is stated that Beresteyskaya Union was an initiative of Episcopate. And it is a known fact that is known to everyone that Beresteyskaya Union was not ideal. And Greek and Catholics, they believe that the approach to the Brest Union, the positions of Rome and locals, they were different. And also here there was tension between Greek and Catholic Church with between them and the Rome, and it continues today. And this is the reaction for the declaration that was signed between Moscow and Rome, and the relationship. There are problems in the relationship, but we have problems everywhere. Only on cemetery we don't have any problems, and everyone is agreed on everything. But if you are alive, there are always problems that they are solved in a dialogue. Someone criticizes, someone is not satisfied, other should react, take into account or not take into account the position. And this is the history of relationship between the Greek and Catholic Church and Rome. And the Greek and Catholic Church, they see that they should confess about the diversity of Christianity, and they should show that you can be of Eastern tradition and you can live your life fully, and you can preserve your tradition, but be open to others and not to confront with others, not to call names, but to find reconciliation. And with the grace of God, we believe that Russian Orthodox Church also critically should look at one's history as it is done by Greek and Catholic Church, by assessing breast union and some processes in the church and other events that happened in Moscow. I wrote tens of articles where I show this phenomena and speak about it as a part of life of Greek and Catholic Church. So we should look at the history in all its diversity, and we should not confuse these facts. We should not construct these facts and try to make them our weapons. We should understand the history. It is complex, and also you mentioned about the collaboration with Nazis. I believe that both Greek and Catholic Church and Orthodox Church can also say about this, because the only was the autonomous church that was connected with Moscow Patriarchate, and not because the history is more complex than that. You cannot manipulate with facts. You should study them in all their fullness. But it's very important, and I absolutely agree with you, that each church, each religious unity and historians that are studying the facts, and we, Greek and Catholic Church, we should look at this history not only as a history of martyrdom, but also I know about this from the interviews of different priests who had personal drama, tragedy. They changed their confessional relationship, and they changed the churches. They went and it is very difficult to choose. Ukrainians, they never had the opportunity to compare evil and good and to choose one of them. They sometimes had to choose the least evil. And we should understand that each church and researchers that are connected with the church, they should start with themselves, with their community. Greek and Catholics, they should speak about the agents who collaborated with the regime, and we will write about them. And I wait when Moscow Patriarchate and historians who are at the church, they should name their problems and they should speak about them openly. We won't force them. We will try by our own example, by our attitude to history, to motivate them, to inspire them because we understand that the circumstances in Russia and in Ukraine, they are absolutely different, and this difference grows as years pass. And Russia goes back to Stalin's times and stereotypes, and Ukraine, it has the chance to become free, and people have the chance here to speak openly. That's why we should use this freedom, and we should share this freedom with other peoples, and to help them to think as free people, not as slaves of stereotypes and schemes. One more question, because we have time for one question. Воскресенье Live Radio. The most important goal of this exhibition, it's surprising this it will be only for the 18th of March, and will it work on a permanent basis somewhere, and will it be visiting other places of Ukraine, because this is very important. Briefly, this exhibition is prepared. It has been prepared for 5 years, and it is. We did not monopolize it, and there are some copies of this exhibition. It is spread in different regions, and it is permanently presented in Catholic University in Lviv, and as I know, there are other in Kiev and Askold Grave. It was also presented, and we are open to present this exhibition, and if people want, and I don't see any problems with that, this exhibition will function, and there's a catalog of this exhibition that is published in the form of a good illustrated book, and my colleagues from Lviv will bring it here, and you can buy this catalog, and you will have this exhibition in the form of the book at your home. So we inspire everyone who are interested in this topic. You can contact us with the Institute of History of Church, and those who want to hold this exhibition. We are ready to come and to discuss the issues. And you know that you should present this exhibition, because we should pay attention of people. We should explain what it is. That's why we want your support on this. And also, we should support initiatives from the regions. And when people ask, we will have the opportunity to do this. And the Institute of National Memory, we have some exhibitions that are in different regions, and they are an exhibition on Sheptitsky, and we have copy left, so everyone can present a copy of this exhibition, and they can use this. And so we are waiting for the initiatives that will be supported, and they will spread the information. Ukrainian Crisis Media Center, I have a question. 2 days ago at Ukraine Crisis Media Center, we had a discussion with Greek and Catholic Church representatives, with Orthodox Church representatives about Cuba meeting, and we had a question about the previous meeting, and I would like to ask about the meeting that will be held tomorrow with the Pope, and do you have some expectations of this meeting, and maybe the rhetoric of the Vatican will change as to Greek and Roman Church and to the Orthodox Church? It's difficult to say for sure, but the meeting of permanent assembly that are those who are in Rome permanently, tomorrow they will have the meeting with the Pope, and I will tell you honestly, it's very difficult for me to say what will be, but I foresee and I hope that in the course of this meeting, they will discuss those difficulties that exist. And I believe that we don't have information, direct information, but I believe that this topic will be discussed, and I hope that as conclusions of yesterday's or tomorrow's meeting, there will be some declarations from the side of our permanent assembly, and I hope that this will be a very good idea, because I believe that that meeting, they should consider broadly the issues, and what Pope said on the plane, and what in Brazil Patriarch Kirill told, and there are many other issues of preparation that were known after the meeting, and I believe that it is very important and desirable that this event was considered properly and understood. And it, of course, inspired the first reaction, strong reaction, negative reaction, and maybe it is right. I don't reject it, but it would be useful if this event, this meeting that was prepared, and that what happened in the course of it, if something will be carried out, it should be properly presented, objectively, clearly, and it should be analyzed properly, and then I hope we will have calmer approach, a more realistic approach, and maybe there will be some positive and negative things, and we should have full understanding, and the use of this information is also of importance. And we are speaking about the permanent assembly. Boris is also the member of this assembly, and Svetoslav, who belong there, they will have this private audience with the Pope. Thank you very much for being with us, for the interest in our topic, and we invite you at 1 p.m. The